Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the View from the Medway, and also our first interview. I'm absolutely delighted this evening to be joined by our former financial director, co-chairman, CEO, and fellow Gills fan, Paul Fisher. And as everyone knows him better, Fish. How are you, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Chris. Yeah, nice to be on. I'm slightly yesterday's man now. I know that. Hopefully, I can still be of some interest.
You're humble as ever, mate. To be fair to me and to a lot of Gills fans, you were instrumental in a lot of things that happened at the club towards the end of the tenure. So, we can only thank you to start off with. Being a Gills fan, and we knew you grew up a stone's throw away from the Priestfield. The club have recently had this thing going with the I fell in love moment. And I know you've gone on record before as saying, if we cut you in half, you'd be Gillingham through and through, like a stick of rock. So when was your I fell in love moment?
Well, I was literally born in Pier Road, actually. For those of you old enough who can remember AXO Chemical Works, which probably explains a lot about me. I was born literally down there, just in Pier Road. So only about sort of 10-15 minute walk from the ground, just along from the Strand. And I remember my dad took me to an evening match, I think, in the early 70s. I think we were playing Brighton, so it was a good atmosphere, big crowd. And I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I remember walking in, remember walking up the old steps onto the Gillingham end terrace and just seeing the floodlights and, the beautiful carpeted pitch under the lights. It always looks a lot better. And I remember it was a really good game, great atmosphere amongst the fans. Standing there with your dad when you're 7 or 8 years old, watching the Gills play, it was just fantastic, And then I followed them, as I got in my teenage years. I followed them all around the country, on the away coaches and stuff, all the Swindon playoff finals, the 3 games against them, Sunderland, and all that stuff, really. So, but it was probably that first time I went with my dad, really. God bless his soul, really. And, back in the sort of early 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was a gradual thing for me, 97 onwards, and then I travelled the world a bit. I didn't really go to games and stuff, so yeah, no, it was more of my first season ticket wasn't until 2013. So my uncle was he's a massive fan. He goes to every game. So yeah, for me, it took a little bit longer, but. No, no, that's amazing. Like going with your dad and stuff. Like it would have, my dad's not a massive football fan, so it'd have been a dream for me to go with him. But yeah, no, I mean, as you say, God rest your dad's soul and stuff. But no, I think it's brilliant the way the club's going, the way that they've had that I fell in love thing with all the fans and everything else. I just think it's brilliant. So if we just go on, we touch on before we get into the Gills properly. We just touch on your previous life before this, I guess. So, like you studied at Gillingham Technical College, and you went on to study accountancy at Mid-Kent College, and then university in Westminster. You hear about people like falling into jobs or falling into a certain aspect of life without actually necessarily wanting to do that. When did you kind of fall into or know that accountancy was going to be the thing that you were going to go for?
Well, I went to Gillingham Technical Gillingham Technical High School in Pump Lane in Raynham.
Yeah.
And then I went off to what was Central London Polytechnic, and I did business studies and finance there. But I did a sandwich degree, which meant my third year of the degree was out working. And my mum used to work in the canteen up at Lucas CAV,
right.
Which was the big factory up on the Link Road. And I had to find a job for a year. And my mum, bless her, she found me a job up there working in the finance department in my third year. part of the deal was I had to play football for the works football team really, and so yes, I was working in the finance department up at Lucas CAV, and so I went back, finished my degree, and then I saw there was an advert in the Chatham News for a graduate trainee accountant for Gillingham, Rochester, and Swale and Maidstone borough councils, and so I put my CV in, and yeah, I got made an offer, and you know, I started in the council. Bless them, they sort of sent me on block release to college to get my accountancy exams, and you know, I was working. I worked at I ended up at Rochester upon Medway City Council for. There'll be a few people probably watching this who remember me from those days, and I ended up as sort of, you know, assistant chief exec there really, which is how I met Paul Scally, because that was just in the times when Paul had taken the football club over, and he came in to see us a few times about when he was looking at relocations of the club. I think, you know, Cuxton was in our area down on the riverside there at Cuxton, and that's how I got to know Paul really, and in the end, that's how I came to, you know, I came to work at the Gills first time round.
Wow, that's brilliant. Like, it must be, you know, you're a Gillingham fan, and then you come to work with us. You know, 1997, you came in as finance director. You was at the club for 4 years. During that time, we had the infamous Man City playoff final. As well as the following year, which we now have a kit paying homage to that, which I think is absolutely fantastic from the club. So what was your biggest achievement really, I'd say, when you was at the Gills the first time as finance director?
Well, I think you know, you can look at all the stadium redevelopment, which you know, we were all involved in really, you know, led by Paul. I mean, redevelopment of the stadium is obviously up there, but the one I really look back on with real fond memories was actually the Man City playoff. First time a club had ever been to Wembley, and I just remember the arrangements we had to put in place to sell the tickets.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a story around it, which I don't know how public this is, but what actually happened there was that Man City sent the Football League at the time sent us Man City's allocation of tickets. They made a mistake. They actually sent us Man City's ticket, and I was living in Lower Housetown then, and they sent us the tickets, and Gwen Pointer, who was the excellent sort of previous club secretary, we had to sort of take some seats out for the segregation bit really, and then I took about sort of 3 million quid's worth of tickets home with me that night to Lower Housetown and slept with them under my bed. And then before we went on sale, I remember coming into the stadium about 6:30 the following morning, and we'd opened up sort of 4 areas around the 4 corners of the ground really to sell various tickets in various blocks and stuff. And good old Paul really. Paul came up with the idea, and he was absolutely right on this. I backed him totally. Was that we started to sell from the segregation area backwards, because we realised they'd sent us the wrong tickets, and that's why we started to sell them from there. So we then knew we couldn't give those tickets back to Man City, and I think we had about 55,000 tickets, and Man City had less than us. I think they had about 40,000 tickets.
Wow.
And then I remember having a massive row with Dennis Stewart, who was a director at Man City at the time. But once we sold those tickets, we couldn't go back on them, you see. So that's what we did. And I think, you know, I remember we were saying, well, how are we going to bloody sell all these tickets? The club had never been at Wembley before. And we were letting people have 8 tickets a time.
Yeah.
And the club was just under siege. I just remember it was just fantastic. It was a great buzz. I think selling those tickets, counting all that cash, was just, because back in those days there was no Apple Pay or any of that sort of stuff. It was a lot of that was cash. Yeah. So it was just that was a hell of an achievement really.
Oh man.
And actually, And probably to stop Man City getting as many tickets as us. That was the major achievement.
Yeah, yeah, and then the famous 5 minutes after that ensued. But yeah, oh, that sounds mad. Like, so because everything now at the stadium is card only, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
You
and
don't have,
back then, as I say, there was no card list. It was there was a few credit cards, but it was when you used to have to still put your card
swiping.
inside a swipe machine and all that sort
Yeah,
of stuff. So yeah, and if I remember rightly, I think it was a party atmosphere down there.
yeah,
People, we let people in the ground. We moved them around block by block till they got their tickets. I think most people got a ticket, and I think we took about 50, about 85, 90,000, and
yeah.
we certainly had about 10,000 more there than Man City, and it really utterly pissed Man City off, which was brilliant.
Yeah, I was only 7 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know, 10 years old at the time. So yeah, I vaguely remember, but not to the extent where I can remember a lot. But sounds absolute. Uh, just back in them days. I mean, even like the club shirt now, where like with the Wigan final, we have like
Yeah.
the names in the back. I think it's just a quality. It's a quality thing. Like Carla Saba, Bob Taylor, and that back in the day, and yeah, I just.
Yeah, we
I
had
wish,
a hell of a team then as well. We had a really good side, really good
yeah,
side. It was great to watch, powerful. Didn't let many goals in. Nobody wanted to play against us.
yeah. I mean, and then we like obviously the when we went up against Wigan, the last minute goal.
Yeah,
It was just them days. I was watching a few things on YouTube the other day, and it was just like the goosebumps it gave me, and that it was just absolutely unreal. Uh,
yeah. I mean, the really important goal in that match, I remember it well, was Steve Butler.
yeah,
Steve was I think about 38 and was sort of the assistant coach, if I remember rightly. He was a sort of player coach. Steve was a really nice guy, and he came off the bench, and I saw it. I watched it again the other day. He scored an absolute bullet header, which was sort of I think with about 10 minutes to go in extra time, and then Tomo gets that glancing diving header that he was really good at.
yeah, good old Tobo. But no, I mean, like, so you leave the Gills in 2001. What was the reason for your leaving, or was it just to go to the Jockey Club?
Well, it was career really, Chris. At that stage, the club I think had sort of peaked to where it was going to get to, and like probably all of us, I was still ambitious for my own career.
Yeah,
My wife comes from, she came from Epsom, but her work was round this way. She was working at Chertsey and commuting every day from. She was commuting every day from Lower Houseway where we were living,
yeah,
and the bloody traffic was doing her head in, and I was going. So we sort of moved. We moved round to Surrey, round to Reigate, and I got a job as to start with. I got a job as finance director for Sandown, Kempton, and Epsom racecourses, which is just up the way from here.
yeah. I don't know much about horse racing or what it entails with the job that you did. The director for the Jockey Club. I mean, you were there for 20 years. Clearly,
Yeah.
you loved the job. So, what does that entail?
Well, I was. I started off as finance director for the three tracks. I then was MD at Kempton Park when we put the Floodlit all-weather track in there. I had to relaunch that, and then I eventually ended up as chief executive of the whole group. And the Jockey Club owns 15 racecourses up and down the country. So
Hmm.
I was for the last 10 years I was the CEO, and I was in charge of the Grand National, the Derby, the Cheltenham Festival, all the Newmarket. It's all the I think three of the biggest, most attended events in the UK. So it was a big, it was a pretty big job. Big companies turn over about 250 million a year.
Blimey.
So yeah, a lot of people, a lot of people used to come along. 4 million people would attend. So yeah, it was a big event. A lot of stuff on the TV, Grand National, lots of pressure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, 600 million people watching the Grand National around the world. that tends to keep you focused.
Tends to, yeah, tends to get you a bit sweating, I guess.
Yeah. Especially when
But
things go
no,
wrong.
so why did you leave? Was it to come back to Gillingham, or was it just
No, my chairman now, my chairman, a chap called Simon Bazalgette, him and I were a really good partnership. And basically, Simon and I decided that we'd strike out on our own, really, before we
right?
got too old. And we set our own company up now, which is, our company GVS. And it was kind of, a case of putting it bluntly, trying to make some, proper money before we get too old.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. That's fair. At the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, and we would do as much as we can with the short time we have. So
Yeah, and we were a good partnership, and I think, when you've run a big company like that for 10 years, I think you've sort of done your time.
yeah,
I think it was time for new challenges, really.
yeah. So then you come back to Gillingham.
Yeah, it was kind of, Paul approached me. Paul Scally approached me. I think it was kind of summer. When would that have been? Yeah, it was the summer before last, and it was pretty well publicised. Paul was having a few health issues, health problems, uh, and we had a lot of discussions. And he basically said, could you come back and, could I come back and help for a while? And that's how I got back involved
Yeah, I
before the
mean,
start of the season.
yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult one because you came in back in August. I think most of the pre-season was pretty much already done then, so you didn't really have. I think for me, the input that you had with the club was it saved the club, and I'm not the only one that says that. I feel that if you'd have come in earlier in that pre-season, and I mean no disrespect to anyone else, we probably wouldn't have been where we were come December, January time.
Well, bottom, if I remember rightly, we were bottom of the league.
We were, yeah, but we might have been 23rd, no?
Oh, okay, yeah. Uh,
So you come back to us in August 22 as co-chairman. Like, how do you feel the club had changed since your first stint?
it had when I got back involved, I think the club had not recovered from COVID. It
Right,
was all, there was no there was no events in the Great Hall taking place. A lot of the tea bars and all the food outlets, it was just half of them weren't open. The club just needed a bit of a reboot, really, and a great team down there, great sort of members of staff, but a lot of those you could see everybody was walking around with their heads down. It sort of felt to me as if a bit, and plus I think it's been well publicised, well documented. The club had lost touch with its fans as well a little bit, and
yeah,
that engagement with the fans. And I hope one of the little things I did try to do was at least try to engage with the fans a bit, and try to make them, understand what we were trying to do. So, I improved communication. I did a bit of social media, which I think people found pretty refreshing. And I think the team down there now have taken it on to a whole different level, which is great. But I like to think I kind of lit the blue touch paper, really.
yeah. No, we'll get onto it shortly, but I mean, I've already said you've been an instrumental part of where the club is now for me. But so we had a shocking start. Let's not make any bones about it.
Well,
Um,
the start was okay, if I remember rightly. I think we may have lost the first game away, and then I think we beat Rochdale at home.
mm,
And I thought we played bloody well that day against Rochdale. I thought we were in for a good season. I remember Sean Williams just looked a whole different class in midfield. He was stroking the ball around like, just looked a different class to everybody else. I thought, we're going to have a really good season, but it wasn't to be.
well, no, I mean, no, it wasn't. And to be fair, he was instrumental in us finishing where we did last season, with his late goals that he was getting us a little while. So you come in the August. I mean, Neil Harris had already said that he needed players. obviously you can't influence that too much when you're three-quarters of the way through the transfer window. Do you think that enough was done by the club to give him the players that he needed to survive in that league?
I think that's, you have to look back on it in hindsight and probably say, compared to like having Kenny and the whole recruitment team that, after the Galinsons came in, that football side of the business was strengthened immensely. And so clearly, I think back in summer 22, it was Neil with a phone, Nicky Shorey, and a few HRs in an office, really. So, there was no sort of scouting network. Any of that sort of infrastructure was just not in place. So, the obvious answer to that is probably no. And we probably should have and could have done a lot more. But you also have to operate with the resources we had available at the time. We could pay reasonable wages for people, but we certainly were shopping in the free transfer and loan market.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the first things Neil said to me, what to get players to sort of relocate. Trying to, those of us who come from Kent, we all love it. It's down, in the bottom southeast of the country, but getting, at that League Two level to get players to relocate with their families, all that sort of stuff. And when you haven't got a lot of money to play with and being able to pay people lots of relocation expenses, it makes it pretty difficult. So, yeah, we probably could have done and should have done a bit more, but we tried our best.
Yeah,
with the resources we had.
I think as well. I mean, it's not a slight on Paul Scally, but I think maybe he'd got to the point where he was tired. There wasn't enough marketing going on within the club to generate more revenue. I think where he'd been in charge for so long on his own, we had just fallen by the wayside a little bit. And then when
it's kind of what I said. The club hadn't recovered from COVID.
No,
it was functioning, but it was kind of limping along.
Yeah,
it felt to me as if it was it was a bit like a car that isn't running really well. You get from A to B, but it splutter a few times. But it needed to go in the garage and have 4 new spark plugs and a service, really. That's kind of what it felt. The club just needed revving up.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what we tried to do.
No, that's fair enough. Do you feel that any time during that period was there any conversations had between you and Paul, or you and anyone on the board, were like to get rid of Neil?
Well, I think clearly Neil was adult enough to know that he was in a results business. Yeah. But I was a big fan and remain a big fan of Neil Harris. I knew how hard Neil was working with the resources he had available.
Yeah.
And the team, and look at the way he set us up that night away to Brentford when we got that result away to Brentford. That was a Neil Harris result. We didn't play pretty football, but we got, Mika Mandron scored that header and we beat him on penalties. We got a result up there.
Yeah.
It was when we were getting results, it was 1-0. I know we weren't scoring many goals, but again with the resources Neil had, I thought he was making the best use he possibly could have. And there was a good spirit in the camp. The boys were all training well. Neil was in every day, working his socks off. So I guess the short answer was it was never in my mind that we needed to part company with Neil Harris. I needed to, hopefully we come onto it, but we were all hoping to get some, better players and more additional resources in. And I remember saying to Neil, see what you can do with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it brings us nicely on to the next question with us being rock bottom of the league. We get to December and everything changed in the form of Mr. and Mrs. Galinson. When did you find out about their interest? And can you talk me through the process?
Yeah, I won't go into real details because a lot of that will remain confidential. But yeah, it was I think fair to say, Brad was looking around at a few clubs, and he sort of contacted us. I think he'd seen a bit of social media had been going on. He had his own advisors who were advising him. Paul had a Zoom call, I think, with Brad. I then had a Zoom call one Saturday after one of the home games with Brad. It was kind of get to know you. Then Paul went over to Florida, if I remember rightly. Paul went over to the nice warm sunshine to meet Brad in Florida.
Left you in the pissing rain.
Yeah, and spend a bit of time with him, and I think they got on pretty well. And I was left at the cold, windy, wet Priestfield Stadium, and then Shannon came over, and Shannon came over and met all the rest of the sort of team, and I think Shannon was doing her due diligence on the club on behalf of Brad. So she was meeting all the off the field team, and I think she liked what she saw because there's some really good, there are some really good people at the club.
Yeah.
And I was doing sort of a big sales job really, and sort of explaining to them how much potential the club had got. Population of Medway. We took them to meet the council just to see what what that political landscape was like in Medway and what the longer term plans were for the area in terms of growing it. So we marched them around to meet a few important people and to explain just how much potential the club has got. And I believe that to this day. And I knew that from my council days, just Medway and what it should have. I've always thought Medway should at least have a championship side at the very least, but in other parts of the country we'd have a premiership team, and there's no reason why Gillingham and Medway could easily support a premiership side.
I mean, we've got a massive catchment area, to be fair.
Absolutely.
For the size of the towns and everything else, the catchment area is ridiculous. So I really do think that maybe, even like you say, even if we got to touch wood, maybe fingers crossed, whatever you want to say, if we got to the Premier League, I think the infrastructure would have to change a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. But, and that was always Paul's. I know everyone got a bit sort of fed up with it, but to be fair to Paul, that was always his dream, and that's why he was always talking about a new stadium, because you couldn't be in the Premier League with Priestfield. You could, but League One and League Two, Priestfield's perfectly good enough.
100%. I mean, that's probably why our temporary stand has stayed temporary for the last 20 years. Was there any, I mean, I've not asked this question or anything, but was there any plans to develop the Brian Moore, the town end?
Well, there's always, you could easily put another temporary stand in there with a roof on it. Temporary stands are, as good as, Fulham had a temporary stand for a number of years behind their goal, and you wouldn't know it was a temporary stand. So it's always there, but it all comes down to, are we filling the stadium? Is there a need for those? Is there a need for that capacity? And in League Two, once or twice a season maybe, but there's not really other than that. And so it all comes down to sort of priorities in terms of investment. And I'm sure that's the sort of thing that, Brad and Joe and everybody are continuously looking at now.
No, definitely. I think Joe went on record the other day with ME7 and said that, we're not going to do a tour this year. We're going to develop things in the ground where we've got people on the same levels. I mean, as someone who's worked in business a lot, not to the extent of you guys, but it means a lot when you've got certain people on the same level, like on ground floors where you can bounce ideas off instead of having to go downstairs. That flow it means a lot. But I mean, it does for now. It would be nice, as you say, to have just put even if you just top that top bit off and put a roof on it. But I mean, at the moment, we're just, we're more than happy accommodating in the Gordon Road.
But I think it'd be great, I do think it does make a bit of a difference. It's interesting to see our goal ratio attacking the Raynham end compared to attacking the Gillingham end when it's empty, and I think there's something in that. I think I heard one of the players say something about that a few weeks ago.
Timmy Dean was quite vocal last season.
I think there's something in that. I do think there's something in it, in terms of, ticking into something where there's nobody there. It just feels like a training match or something. So I think there might be something in that. So I'm sure Brad and Jeff, they know what they're doing. They'll be looking at that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, so I don't know about you, but I was extremely shocked when Neil got sacked. If we're going to fast forward a little bit,
Yeah.
I was shocked when he got sacked. Um, what do you think of that decision, and what do you think of his recent comments about not being able to trust anyone at the club?
Well, I'm sure Neil felt a bit let down by that decision. I'm
Yeah,
sure he felt let down by certain individuals. I'm still I'm good friends with Neil. These days, we went out for a drink together at Christmas. So Neil's got a few sort of thoughts on that, which are Neil's thoughts. But I'm sure he felt disappointed with certain people who were behind that decision.
mm.
But it's football as well.
It
Football is
is.
a bloody tough business.
Yeah, League Two, League One, Championship, Premier League, La Liga, whatever. It's all cutthroat at some point.
It's cutthroat, and there's a merry-go-round really, and look at the great job Neil did at Millwall at the end of the season, and I was
Yeah,
really
I mean,
pleased for him, really pleased for him.
he definitely lucked up for the season, didn't he? He got sacked with us and he went to Cambridge and then he went back to Millwall. I mean, even if he had stayed with us until January, he probably would have gone back to Millwall anyway. So, you know, Millwall's got a big pull for him. You couldn't. I mean, when he got sacked, I was absolutely shocked. I've heard rumours that it was to do with something his assistant did, or Livermore did, or something like that at Crew, but just
As a
take.
Crawley, I was at that game standing behind the goal.
Yeah,
So, but anyway, who knows? I mean, who knows? But at the end of the day, the decision was made, and the club moved on.
it does. It does. Which then leads us on to Stephen Clement.
Yep.
I think that I personally, I'm on the fence with the whole appointment slash decision to sack him. But we start with the appointment. An elite coach who's coached at various Premier League teams. What did you think when he was appointed?
Well, I'm just talking as a fan now because I'd left the club,
Yeah.
obviously, a long time before that. So I'm only sort of my own personal view as a fan, but it struck me as quite a risky decision.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing Brad, I would have thought, a risk, he'd take a risk. It could have worked out brilliantly for us, but and I'm sure Steve Bruce probably recommended, Stephen. Stephen struck me as a really nice guy.
Mm.
Really nice guy. I think if I'd still been there, I would have been sort of sending him on some, media training maybe just to have improved his, just
Charisma.
improved his, that's all. I mean, he struck me as a really nice guy, but I think could have done with some work on his own sort of persona and personality in front of the camera.
Yeah.
But it struck me as a risky decision, and sometimes risks work out, sometimes they don't, and unfortunately, it didn't work out with Stephen.
No. No, I mean, I'm on the fence with it. I mean, I can see both sides with, the appointment. I think he's an elite coach. There's no doubt about that. You don't work for some top Premier League teams without being a good coach. Um, at the time, I thought it was quite a risky decision, and
But possibly, I think you've got to look at it in the round here as well, with the sort of change in structure post the takeover. Whereas Neil was manager when I was there, but then once Brad and Shannon bought the club, we strengthened the whole sort of football department and had a more sort of the more modern way of doing things with a director of football and head of recruitment, and so I think it was a big move. Once you were then appointing a head coach rather than a manager.
yeah, that's something that I don't necessarily agree with at our level. And I'll be completely honest, I don't agree with it. I think that it should be owner, then maybe a managing director, then a manager and his staff and his own scouting network. I don't believe that people should be choosing players for the manager necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as blunt as that Chris, in terms of, you know, a head of recruitment or sorry, director of football chooses the players, and then they all turn up on a Monday morning, and it's down to the coach to turn them into a team. You know, I'm sure there's a huge amount of, you know, well, I did see it. There's a huge amount of interaction between, you know, between the first team coach and the, you know, recruitment department. But I do, you know, I do sometimes look at it and think how many clubs at League Two level have got that sort of. But maybe we're setting ourselves up for, you know, as we're going to grow and go forward.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly more common the higher up you go in the leagues, and I'd say most Premier League clubs and Championship clubs have got that sort of structure.
Yeah, they do. They do these days. I just think like League Two. I don't know if it's well. We won't find out now because I think they've kind of realised that having a first team coach wasn't the route to go. So we've now got someone different. We'll get on to that. How do you feel really about his time in charge, and do you feel that he was sacked prematurely at all? I mean, I feel
Again,
personally he wasn't given
yeah,
in January. He wasn't given.
yeah.
He's like a carpenter without a saw in January.
Yeah, again, I think nothing surprises me these days in football. But again, that was another one. I remember when I got the alert come through on my phone. I thought he would have been given another transfer window.
Mm.
That's probably, you know, but I mean, I wasn't party to what was going on behind the scenes.
Oh,
So,
of course,
it
this is
struck me just looking as
fan.
a fan. But you know, the football, you know, we certainly weren't progressing, and we had a terrible ending to the season, didn't we?
Yeah, it
You
wasn't
know, we
great.
didn't get in the playoffs. Uh, you know, and we just fell away towards the end of the season. Some of those performances were really poor.
Yeah, namely Harrogate game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, capitulated totally. Just didn't. I don't know. It was difficult because you could see what he was trying to do. For me, you could see what he was trying to do. Yeah, but you just couldn't. There was no. I get both sides. I get the side of he should have gone, and I also get the side of he should have been given time. You know, but at the end of the day, it's not our money. We're not the ones spending money, and if they don't feel confident on keeping that person in the job to spend their money with, then you know. So
Well, I guess the other side of it was if you'd given Stephen a transfer window, and then you'd got through, and the first half of the season was poor, you'd probably have to make that decision probably November, December time, and then a new manager's going to want to get his new crop of players in January, and January's not a good time in the transfer market to try to get new players in. So,
yeah,
you know, because you are, you know, you can be desperate at that point.
yeah,
So, you know, it's probably if you're going to do it, it's better to sort of, you know, cut your losses earlier, rather, you know, sooner rather than later.
yeah. No, I get that. So we've recently also had the announcement. I mean, we're going back a little bit now that Joe Comper, who a man that you know well and you've worked with,
Yep.
he's been made managing director. I mean, I've met Joe myself. Seems like a lovely bloke. What do you feel about that appointment? Because it's quite, for me, it's a good one. It's a good one because it brings everything under one umbrella as they've spoken about. But having the experience in that department, how do you feel about that appointment?
Look, you know, I worked with Joe. He's a very competent guy. When I was there, he was commercial. I think he was commercial manager. But it was pretty clear, you know, obviously sort of post COVID when there wasn't many people around, everything was going through Joe anyway. So, you know, Joe was, you know, Joe was a, you know, he's a top guy. You know, I wish him all the best. I remember, you know, when I was leaving, I did sit down with Joe really, and I said to him, you know, you've got a lot of potential, Joe. You know, I could see a lot of potential into, you know, for a career in football or in, you know, in sports. You know, to become a, you know, managing director, CEO, that, you know, that sort of role. I probably I didn't think it would happen for Joe quite as quickly as it has, but I wish him all the best. I think
Yeah.
you know, he's got plenty of enthusiasm. He loves a microphone. He's a bit of a personality. His jokes aren't the best, but you know, he's a good guy, and I think he's well liked by people. And
Oh,
I think that's an important characteristic. I think for,
yeah.
you know, leading an organisation like the Gills.
Yeah, and you know what? I think he had it down to the T the other day. I mean, everyone took the Mickey. I mean, the sun. Not that many people listen to the Sun anyway. But saying about him going into the town and doing the reveal for Armani Little, saying, "Oh, it's so League Two and this, that, and the other." But I think it's nice. It's nice that he was even honest and went, "Well, we've run out of ideas, so we're just
Well,
bringing them to
also,
the town."
it's all about community engagement,
Yeah.
to use a sort of buzzword. And, that's what something the club had sort of lost, really.
Mm.
We didn't have a community department or any of that sort of stuff when I got back there. And, I think any of that sort of stuff where you're engaging with the local community more, whatever it is, it's got to be a good thing. Back in the day, we used to sort of have a shop up at Hempstead Valley Shopping Centre. And, I guess as we move forward, those sorts of things will, do full circle and start to happen again. But no, I applaud Joe for that. And I'd say, keep doing plenty of it in school visits and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. No. I mean, no disrespect to yourself with this, but I do feel like since the takeover, I mean, it was like an overnight change, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's no disrespect to you. It just felt like an overnight change, and it was like more community based. It was more, you didn't really have a chance in a respect to change too much in the short space of time. But the things that you did set us up for what we now are.
Well, I'd describe it, Chris. All I did was, I lit the blue touch paper really and made people believe in themselves a little bit, and created an environment where they felt empowered to do things like that.
Yeah.
Which they weren't before. So I love seeing it. I love seeing it.
Right, it's great. I mean, it must be amazing as a fan for yourself as well, because like being in that position and being a fan as well to then see the club flourish now. It must be like a real warm feeling for yourself to be like.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love the fact we got a club shop open again now. I remember when I first went back there, we had bloody shutters down all day and pigeons muck everywhere. It was just all of that. We sort of just lost the plot a little bit really about, us being a community-based football club. So, Joe and all the team will take it to another level. I'm absolutely sure of that. And, and Brad and Shannon are both very switched on to that community piece, and they get it.
Yeah. No, they definitely do. And, we've now got an actual first team manager instead of a first team coach in Mark Bonner. What do you think of him? Do you think he I see him at Cambridge, and I think what he did in League Two was absolutely phenomenal, considering it's his first job, and now he's come to us. So I guess the remit was we were looking for a manager that had achieved promotion from the league. So we've essentially got what we wanted.
I think he seems to have a good media presence, comes across well. I think first impressions, which are really important in life, he's made a good first impression. I think it looks like the club's doing some good business, on paper in the transfer window. But it's like anything in football. Proof of the pudding is kind of results on the pitch.
Yeah.
Can Mark Bonner turn those players into a promotion challenging team? Let's hope so. And I really wish him all the best. I hope he can do it.
Yeah, no, I mean we've obviously brought in a couple of signings already. Signings that have actually scored goals, which is a swear word for us.
Yeah.
Which,
we don't want too much of that down there.
Ourselves. It'll be our luck that they won't score at all next season. It'll just be, But so we've got Elliot Nevitt. We've got Jack Nolan. Armani Little, who I'm absolutely buzzing about. Armani Little. I've been waxing lyrical about him all week on X and Facebook, and so I'm really hoping he does me well this season.
I think League. My personal view, I'm a bit old school. I think League Two, you got to have pace, and you got to have you got to have a big side. Tony Pulis's side was a big side. You got to have an animal in central midfield who goes around, bossing the game, and you've got to get the ball forward quick. I think that's why I didn't really enjoy Stephen Clements's sort of style of football, because you could see it was kind of Premiership, get the ball down, tap it around in pretty triangles. I'm not convinced that gets you out of League Two. got
No.
a place at Championship and League One, but I'm a bit old school. I think you need, big, quick lads up front, get the ball forward, few elbows flying around. That's the sort of that's what League Two footballs are like.
Yeah. Do you think that's where maybe where Johnny Williams struggled last season? Because Johnny Williams is obviously he's very familiar with the Premier League. He's very familiar with League or Championship. He went to Swindon. He did all right there, but do you think because it's quite a physical league and he's such a small person, do you think it's that's where he struggled? Because every game last season, all I saw was him getting absolutely battered.
It's a physical league. The year I was at the club, I went to 90% of the away games. I remember going to Sutton away. They're all bloody giants. We had Scott Cashgett up front, quick, but he was about 5'2" tall, and he was up against guys who were 6'4". They all look, when you see them in the tunnel afterwards, they look like basketball players. They're big, physical, and that's what this league is. Harrogate, anyone who was up there, they're big side.
Yeah.
Barrow, big side. You've got to meet that physical challenge, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you do. I don't think that. I think this is why Ethan Coleman's kind of flourished this season, because he's quite big, he's quite physical in the middle of the park. You've then got Max Hamer's just Max Hamer, 400 appearances, man. He was there when you were there.
Don't underestimate Max. He's still a very good player. Still a very good player.
And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. And from me personally as well, I was critical at the beginning of the season. I think Connor Masterson was injured and he was playing with Shad, and then he dropped out of the team under Neil. And I was like, oh yeah, it doesn't. I'm not really that bothered. But then he's just literally come back and he's just flourished the whole season. He's just been boom, boom, boom. He's there. He's Mr. Consistent. Okay, we're not going to expect him to have a 9 out of 10 game every week, but then we're not going to expect anyone to have a 9 out of 10 game. If they have a 9 out of 10 game, they're not going to be in League Two.
He doesn't have many 5 out of 10 games.
Sorry?
He doesn't have many 5 out of 10 games with Max.
No. But he's an absolute stalwart. He really is in that defence. And, was he 32 now?
32, 33, I think. Yeah, but he's
got a couple of years left, at least. But yeah, no, I think. What do you think should be our minimum aim next season?
Well, I think I've owned a few racehorses, and the first time they run, the best feeling you ever get is when they're running down to the start on their first ever race.
Right.
Because you think you've either got the Derby winner or the Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. And I think similar goes with football, really. I think if you go into a season and you're not thinking you're going to win the league or you're not going to get promotion, then you kind of have to take a long hard look at yourself. And I think, I'm sure Brad and Shannon are ambitious, and I'm sure they've set a target of promotion this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said it on previous. I did a fan zone a couple of weeks ago, and I think for me, minimum should be top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not going into the season with that aim, then you might have to ask, what's the point, really?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
You obviously change your objectives during the season. If you're down near the bottom, you've got to think, right, we mustn't go down. You've got to.
You're accustomed to that, there, Paul.
Well, absolutely. But we did end up doing quite well in the end. But that's kind of, you've got to set yourself the objective for going up, and I'm sure that's what the plan is for the club.
Yeah.
Hopefully this year.
Well, hopefully for them, hopefully for the players, hopefully for us as fans. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much where we're going to wind up this evening, if that's all right with you.
Okay, sir.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on, and I can't thank you enough for.
That's all right, Chris. Anytime. No worries. And I do sit in the Medway stand, so it's probably.
You do, yeah. So you are the view from the Medway.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, if you're still watching, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, everything else, and up the Gills.
Up the Gills.